Looks good for day 2. Alright, welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is you want me to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Michael. It says Biesy, IHS. Maybe Biesy? Biesy? I don't know. They're a Polish band, and I could find zero information about how to pronounce that name. No interviews or anything with them. So, I'm going to stick with Biesy. Looks right to my eyes. And let's dive into this. This track is called IHS. Let's see what's going on with these guys. Like Blackened dance music. That's kind of like Blackened shoegaze. What is going on here?
Lions in the sky. Oh, flying in the sea. Restless man. Na głos, mów mi tato. Pokażę ci. Gdzie trzymam tajemnicę. Ale zobaczę twój sekret.
Really interesting use of diverse vocalization as well. Different vocal timbres. A little bit of fun syncopation on the cymbals there. That was an abrasive tone, though. I'm not a fan of that.
Ale lepiej otwórz swoje serce. Na moje słowa. Bierz pod język. Nie do siebie. Jesteście sobą.
Interesting, we have some brighter ideas in here. They're still really going for that That darker chordal progression.
Tutaj naprawdę sucho, ale nie ma dowodu, że jesteśmy na szczycie.
There's so much distortion and compression. I can barely even make anything out here other than just the really higher-pitched synth stuff on the outsides. Got that chugging underneath from the bass. I wonder how much melody there is in this track that I'm just missing beneath all of the fuzz. Because even right here I can hear that, but it's slowly getting drowned out. Slight tempo increase. Such an eclectic combination of ideas, and it works so well. I really love the chordal work right here. Interesting. An eclectic mix of electronic styles with sort of a Blackened vibe, both production-wise and vocally, while also sort of playing around with melodic and harmonic components from both of them to create something wholly unique that, like I said, I don't think I've heard this combination of ideas before, but it honestly does work. So the track starts with, like I mentioned, Blackened dance music. We had a very crispy, never used that before, crispy production style with a lot of fuzz and distortion on a lot of the instruments, but we had this super loud, prominent percussive strike on every downbeat, really giving us that four on the floor style. And it sounded like a driving EDM track, but instead of bouncy synth stuff providing our lead elements and our bass elements, we had fuzzy guitars and bass and uh, blackened vocals. A very narrow, harsh style. And we're in this style for a while, minute and a half or so. It doesn't really advance anywhere. Um, it just sort of is for that whole time frame. It's a lot of focus on, at least for me, the vocals and the texture and the atmosphere of the section. After this, though, we shift over into something that, at least to me, feels more blackened, more black metal. We kind of move away from that, I don't want to say clean production, but cleaner production into something that, for me, is very difficult to parse. This whole high compression, low fidelity, lots of distortion and compression and fuzziness. It's really difficult for me to get past that overbearing texture to get into the notes and the timbres themselves to really hear what's going on. So this section just kind of lines up purely as black metal for me, where I can't really hear what's happening. I can hear that there's movement from some of the instruments, and other instruments feel like they're rather static as far as the notes go. But to me, it's just kind of a wall of sound, of fuzziness. And the vocals continue. Something interesting about this section, though, is that it kind of comes out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it. The transition, if I remember right, was just like we were doing this blackened EDM, and then there was a beat of silence into this new concept, which is just straight up black metal. Um, the vocals, though, did not let up. It was two, three, four syllables at a time, and then space between them. And this sort of persisted through the whole track. It's what makes every section feel very connected. Is that the vocals just don't, they're not in a hurry. They're really not. I mean, I have the vocals here, I mean the lyrics, because I needed to translate them and have this ready to go. There's actually not a lot of lyrics here for 8.5 minutes, but our vocalist also doesn't let up. It's not like a prog rock song where we'll get an exposition dump in the first 2 minutes and then have 9 minutes of instrumental work. The vocals are consistent throughout the track, but there's just not a lot of them because they're not given in very large chunks. In fact, as far as I can tell, paying attention to the native lyrics as well and doing my best to line up pronunciations with these words, the vocalist was singing, I don't know, two, three words at a time, and you don't get a full sentence until like 30 seconds worth of music. It's a really interesting way to go about crafting the lyrics and the vocals in that manner, in having a song that feels like it's constantly moving forward. No part in here really feels like it's dragging or pulling back. In fact, we even had a moment where we had a slight tempo increase near the end to even accelerate the song. But the vocals take their time, and a lot of, I don't know which way to go about this, whether it's the music that dictated the vocals or the vocals that dictated the lyrics, or the vocals that dictated the music. But there's a lot of repetition in here. I'd say that there's four main sections to the song, and they probably are consistent of 4 bar phrases each. without much addition or layers put on top of them as the song goes on. We kind of get what the section is doing the first time we hear it, and it stays consistent for about 2 minutes or so of the song on average. And I get the feeling that the song is 9 minutes long because the lyrics take so long to deliver. And I don't know how to approach it. It doesn't work for me. It really doesn't. I think each of the individual sections is fine. I think the song is a bit lengthy because of all the repetition. If we cut each section in half and bring this down to a 4.5 minute track, 4:15, I think the same everything there's I don't think anything would be lost other than just the sheer width of it. And of course, there is an element that needs to be considered about sitting in these environments for as long as they do. It's obvious that the intent of the composer was to create these large pockets of space. In fact, I'm kind of coming around it from the other side that maybe the music was done first and the lyrics were stretched out to fit the time frame of the music. That's kind of I think that's what makes the most sense to me. Maybe when we get into the lyrics, it makes sense to take them piece by piece and only look at 2 or 3 words at a time. But where I'm at right now, I think it makes the most sense that the song was written like an electronic song first, with extended time given to each of the sections, and then the lyrics were stretched out to accommodate the lengthy time frame. Um, but aside from just the sheer amount of time we spent in the songs, which does have its own impact, its own purpose. Obviously, the producer, or not the producer, the composer decided that we needed to spend so much time in these sections, but at least from my first listen, if we had cut every section in half and removed all the space between the words, or half the space between the words, I don't feel like anything would have been lost. I feel like the song would have had the identical impact on me, though the tightened pacing would have benefited my personal tastes in the music. That's not to say it would be a better version. It would be a different version, for sure. One that fits better to my personal tastes, but not one that is subjectively better. I, as just somebody on the internet, don't see the purpose of spending so much time in the sections and having so much space between the words. I don't I can't perceive what was gained out of that. Um, but as usual, I don't try to sit up here as some sort of musical authority. That's just my opinion of a song that I've only heard once. It's very possible I'll hear this, 3 or 4 times and I'm like, oh, it starts to click, right? Maybe I get the themes of the lyrics and they're expressed through the onslaught and length of the track. There's certainly uh, a path that I could walk down where in one instance of the future I come around to understanding the use of the time. But as like I said, as a first listen, it went right over my head. I don't see anything gained from it. Um, anyways, though, we move in. I don't know how we got on that topic. We move into the Blackened section. Because the vocals are doing the exact same thing they're doing, tying everything together. After this Blackened section, though, we find a midpoint between these two where we can get back to that Blackened EDM idea that we had from the beginning, but with more of the blackenedness to it, where we have more of uh, that fuzzy wall of sound thing going on with our rock instruments outside of our electronic sounds. And here's where some really interesting things happen in that I get the gist that there are melodies going on here, and maybe not super strong melodies, but typical electro melodies. Things, maybe they're 1 or 2 bar loops that just are super catchy. I can kind of hear stuff like that happening around and within this wall of sound, this blackened noise, but I can't quite make it out. And it's sort of like peering through, I don't know, a frosted window, and you can kind of make out shapes. And like you can see the different light sources, though they're like hyper diffused because of the layer of frost on the window. You can kind of make out what's going on the other side, but you don't have a very clear picture. And that's what this is like to me. I can kind of hear melodies. I can kind of hear notes moving in directions, but I can't piece out what instruments are playing them. I can't piece out what the notes are. I can't piece out what the key is. All I really hear is the noise. But it's done so in a way that we have reintroduced electronic elements around it. And the electronic elements do bring components of melody and chordal writing to them. And it's really interesting because the I can hear the map of the song through these ideas. And I can kind of apply that to what the rock band is doing, the guitar, the bass, and try to basically use that as a legend to say, if this is kind of what the guitar is doing, I'm hearing this vague idea here, let's apply it back to what our electronic sections are doing, utilizing them as a legend or a key, and, you know, kind of transposing the ideas between the two and coming up with a rough idea of what our guitar and bass are doing, which is a really interesting way to go around it. It allows me to bypass the Blackened production and hear what's going on underneath it without actually being able to hear what's going on underneath the production. It was very cool. I think this was about the time when I started to click with the song, and I went from I don't know, a face of concentration or something. And I remember I was starting to jam with it more. And I think I smiled or something. And I was really getting along with it though. And I think it was really neat just having uh, this harmonic mode laid out for me that I can apply other ideas to, even though I don't have all of the pieces. It can fill in what I don't have. Sort of like, nope, that's a weird analogy. We're not going to do that one. Yeah. I don't think I would ever want. It was a RAID analogy of utilizing multiple hard drives to ensure that you don't ever lose data if one of them dies. Like, yeah, if you know what RAID is, you probably can kind of see where my brain was going there. But it's like a really weird analogy. Um, so yeah, here we have this idea though where we're combining these two. We have the blackened part with the music. What's interesting though is that we take this one step further. I think it's an interesting evolution of this track to begin in something that feels wholly EDM with a little bit of a blackened buzz. Shift back over into pretty much a full black metal style, merge the two, and then push further into the electro side. And it's sort of like you overshoot the mixture into one side. Well, then you undershoot the mixture, and then you kind of find a point that works best, and it's like trying to refine that until you find that perfect midpoint between the two ideas. Um, and it's very it's neat. It's neat, it's eclectic, it's different. I don't know that I quite connect with it. But as always, when I listen to something that expands my horizons of what music is and can do, I'm immediately drawn to it. I need to listen to more of this, even though it's not really my cup of tea, just because it's so different. I'm enthralled by it, not just in the experimentation of it, but in how well the experimentation comes off. If I listen to something that's experimental and really iffy, rough around the edges, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I'm glad they're doing it. I might dig into it a little bit, but I'm really going to be looking forward to when other bands take the idea and iterate on it and really refine it down into something. That's when it's going to appeal to me as a casual listening rather than a critical interest. This is already very iterative, though. It is not iterative, refined. This has taken the idea, and it's the first time I've heard it. I don't know if Biesy is standing on the shoulders of others. Maybe they created the sound all on their own. I honestly have no idea. Blackened EDM is not something I ever thought I would say, which I really don't know why, because everything can be blackened. I have come to find out. I should really not be surprised when I find another blackened insert random genre. And, everything can be blackened. I just shouldn't even be surprised by it. But, it's my first introduction to this, and this is very well done. In fact, it's a great introduction overall because it shows me a lot of the variation in it. We can have something that is very dancey with a blackened tinge, and we can have stuff that kind of sits in between, right? We can have more blackened music with electronic atmospheres, and we can do what they're doing in this fourth piece, which I completely forgot I was supposed to be talking about, where we kind of back down on the prominence of a rock band. And we put more focus on the electro side. And through that, we end up having a very strong presence of melody. I had mentioned previously I could kind of hear elements of melody in the music, but I actually hadn't heard it specifically. I kind of had to interpret it based on this legend that they gave me. But here it is full on. We back down and we kind of bring the band aside completely, and we just have this one melodic component. We kind of build it up dance style a little bit. Then we bring the blackened metal band back in. Except that music, that melody is still there. And instead of the electro stuff surrounding the blackened metal, it is now within and intermingling and creating this very unique sound that is both bright and bouncy, driving. It's bright and driving, but also very dark, right? So we have the sonic qualities of bright sounds. Our electro sounds are a bit brighter. They're not really bass heavy, they are treble heavy, and they're designed to sound brighter. I don't really have an analogy for that. When I want to describe the timbre or color of these instruments, bright is what comes to mind here. They're very wide and treble based, not a lot of bassiness to them. It's just a bright sound. But they're also being paired with more traditionally black metal chord composition, which tends to be a bit darker, eerier, more somber. And it's an interesting combination, these two, in that technically it's an oxymoron. We have bright, sad music or bright, eerie music, but it actually ends up working quite well. And I'm not sure why or how. And at this point, I kind of don't care. I really want to dive into this more and see what else this odd genre clashing has to present to me before I really care about how it's done. I mean, I am intrigued, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm always trying to merge things, especially recently as I've taken in more and more of this rock and metal stuff and tried to incorporate it into my bread and butter classical stuff and trying to find a midpoint there that feels very Bryan. So, finding that point at where two or three types of music can merge is something I'm very interested in. But I also just want to see how often this works. This could be a complete one off that is just a perfect combination of the two, and I don't hear anything else in this realm of music that really complements each other as well as it does here. I don't know. Like I said, I just want to know. I want more of this. I don't necessarily like it, but I want more of it. And yeah, that's the whole track. It's this constant, like I mentioned, attempt to find the point where these two styles work. On one hand, we get too much of one. On the other hand, we get too much of the other. We find a point in the middle that's kind of there, but we really don't have enough electro side. And then we kind of find, we slowly tweak it until we find that point where there really is a strong aspect of both. And that might be what the song is about finding the point of fluid duality, where it's not two opposing sides, it's two parts of a whole. I don't know. That's the closest narrative I could come out of this. I could pull out of this track, and it's entirely built on how I felt the evolution of the song being built. Um, let's dive into some lyrics here. These are translated. I pulled them from Google and DeepL and mishmashed them because both of them had some really rigid lines. There are a few lines that I think could probably be worded better, in that these are very close to what I would say is a direct translation, and there could probably be a improved way of working them within the natural language. What is it when you translate something and you take the essence of the translation, but it might not be the same? And I think that some of these lines might work better with that. But let's dig into this. For some, the rudder, for others, stream from the rest of the realms. I count on your voice. Call me dad. I don't know if that's like call me dad or like telling his dad to call me, but I count on your voice. Call me dad. I'll show you where I keep secrets, but I'll see your secret. Would you rather connect or be connected? I like it when you open your legs, but you better open your heart to my word as well. Take it under your tongue, not to yourself. I abhor you, but I don't exclude you. We're about halfway through, and it's all over the place. The lyrics are written on their Bandcamp, so I'm going to assume this is an official stanzazization. That's not a word, but the groupings of our lines, the creation of stanzas. It's done in a series of one long line, two short lines, one long line, two short lines. And I don't really see much of a connection between any of this. Even when looking at them in the groupings that they are, it's very scatterbrained. But there is this idea of me and you. The you does not necessarily need to be one person. It does not need to be one group of people. It does not need to be the same you every time. But I do feel like there is a lot here about I and something else. And there's this idea of understanding, at least in this first section. It says, I count on your voice. I'm still not sure about the call me dad, but assuming that this is a person who wants to speak to their father and that's the voice that they count on, they're in a place where they need to rely on someone else. And they're making that be known, right? I rely on you. I need your guidance, right? I need to talk to you. Please reach out to me. And then it says, I'll show you where I keep secrets, but I'll see your secret. I don't know what's going on there, but again, it's a level of understanding. We have two people who have withheld information from each other, and the one is conceding and say, I'll show you mine, but through that process, I'm also going to find out some of your secrets. Would you rather connect or be connected? That's an interesting line there. Then we have, I like when you open your legs, but open your heart to my word. I really like that line. Like I said, this is one of those times when I think the essence could be kept in if we translate it a different way. Because we could say, we enjoy each other physically, but also I want to be understood emotionally. Right? I think that is a much less crude way of wording that. But the idea just does get across, right? There's a physical relationship here, but that's not all that our vocalist or narrator wants. I don't know this. Take it under your tongue, but not to yourself. That one, I mean, the only thing I think of is under your tongue would be a drug reference, and but not to your. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't connect there for me, and it doesn't tie into the idea of understanding people either. It says, I abhor you, but I don't exclude you. Here we're having a yin and yang thing where we have two sides of the same coin. I don't like you, but I'm not going to leave you out of the group either. You're included as well. Moving on from here, we have it's always some salvation option. I don't know what that means. Can be home delivery, but payment by bank transfer. Yeah, I don't know. That one, I think something's lost in translation. Supposedly, the flood has already come. It's dry here, but there's no evidence we're at the top. T-bomb doom. Tasted good, but a little smell of corpse, or possibly tasted good, but a little dead. Um, Say it nicely, machine. I know how it sounds, but you really have a son. There's a whole world waiting for him. The whole world. The machine has a son. The whole world. And so I get this idea of understanding and connection at the beginning. Everything on the second half seems very disconnected, either heavily drenched in metaphor or, I don't know, just scatterbrained, stream of consciousness. Um, Interestingly, though, here at the end says, I know how it sounds, but you really have a son. The machine has a son. And I'm curious, back at the top, we have that line, call me dad. Maybe this isn't about relying on your parental figure, your father, as a voice of reason, something that you can count on, but maybe I'm counting on your voice speaking to the son. I'm counting on you to lead the way for your generation to push the world forward. You can call me dad. Maybe that's what it is. And maybe this is a lyrics between a story between a parent and their child. Nope. Nope. Definitely not. There is one line that does not work for. We're going to exclude that entirely. So then, yeah, I have no idea here. Like I said, I'm kind of getting this idea of two, right? Two people who are connected in a lot of ways. They have secrets to share with each other. They have been physically intimate with each other. One of them wants emotional intimacy, but there's also enough of an understanding of each other for one party to hate the other. And there's also a child in the mix somewhere. I don't know. It's really difficult for me to try to zero this back into my idea of duality and finding the midpoint for two entities to exist harmoniously that I got from the music. Weird stuff, but very interesting stuff. I love things that push the boundaries like this. Those are my thoughts on Biesy's IHS. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add on to my analysis, or anything you'd like to correct me on, if you have any interpretation on the music or the lyrics, let me know. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here that's behind me. And now you can't even see it. It's really behind me. Silly mood. In there is links for everything. You can pick up some merch, follow me on Twitter, support the channel through Patreon, join a Discord server, submit your own special selections. There's just a bunch of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring that bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, doing more emo stuff. but also more special selections. I actually get to come back tomorrow, which is neat. I'll probably be sneaking in once again. I can't let that emo dude know I'm doing this, and hopefully you guys are keeping your mouths quiet as well. I cannot get caught. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.